Machiavelli Mills TV. So, my boy Derrick Rose, aka Pooh, aka the Inglewood All Star, the Inglewood Assassin. He released a book last week entitled "I'll Show You." So while being on a press run, he went to the Dan Patrick Show and the Stephen A. Smith Show. Even though he didn't get interviewed by Stephen A. Smith himself, another gentleman interviewed him. But it was a both very good interviews. So they basically both posed the question and asked him, "Is he a Hall of Famer?" And Derrick replied, "I am a Hall of Famer. Not in everybody's eyes, but to the people I grew up with, I made it. I executed." And you are absolutely right, young man. You executed to the highest degree. To the highest degree. I tell people, man, like, if you're not from, well, I can't say that. I'm gonna speak for people growing up in Chicago, specifically the people growing up on the south and west side of Chicago. Like, the core, the heart and soul of the city is in the south and west sides, man. To us, Derrick is an icon. He is an iconic figure in Chicago basketball, Chicago sports in general, period. When I was in elementary school, I was in, well, grammar school is what we call it in the shop. When I was in elementary school and I saw D Rose hooping at Simeon, I was astounded. I was in awe. Like, the man was just that magnifying on the court. Like, you couldn't take your eyes off of him on the court. He was a blur on the court. I seen the man get up court in like four dribbles or three or four dribbles from end to end. It was ridiculous. The man was like a speed of lightning. And he was a high flyer. He could pass. He could, and crazy thing about it, D Rose could defend. He could defend in high school. Again, he can play above the rim. He was unselfish. He had great court awareness, great court vision, and he was a guy that liked to be a very good point guard, but he was very unselfish. So watching him play, it was a spectacle, man. People came out in droves to watch Derrick play because of how sensational he was. People, like, we knew. Some people say they knew when he was at Beasley, when he was like in 7th and 8th grade. Me personally, by the time D Rose was a sophomore, I knew he was that deal, and everybody else knew he was coming. He was giving dudes buckets, and it was effortless. Like, he made it look super easy, to the point where if he wanted to score 50, he could have, but he was so unselfish, he didn't. And he made guys around him better. But the thing about it was, I remember seeing him do, like, off a drop step, do like reverse pumps and stuff like that. I'm like, oh my God, golly, it was just incredible to watch. I saw him go against Oak Hill. Oak Hill had all these Division I players, all these top tier players. Derrick was the only one that was like a top 100 player on his team. D Rose was top 5 in the country at that time, number 1 point guard. And I saw him light Brandon Jennings up, light him up. And Simeon got the win by 3 points over number 1 rated Oak Hill, and Simeon was like number 22 team in the country. Like, I promise y'all, Derrick was something special. Him and them battles against Patrick Beverly, against Sharon Collins and John Shire and all that. Chicago basketball, Derrick had Chicago basketball at the forefront of America at that time. And it was because of just, like, again, how great he was as a player. Like, I knew when he went to Memphis, as everybody in Chicago watched every game that not everybody, but I'm in the south, on the south and west sides, everybody that was into basketball paid close attention to whenever the University of Memphis played on TV. It was like that because we knew the kid was special. We knew the kid had what it took. We knew that he had what it took to get them to the national championship game and win the championship. Unfortunately, they didn't win, but Derrick was the missing piece that they needed. And in Chicago, he laid down the foundation of how to do it, man. The kid was humble. He was to himself. He stayed serious about basketball. When he was in high school, he wasn't in trouble. He wasn't an arrogant kid. He wasn't getting he wasn't getting in all these crazy incidents and all of that. Now, he had some legal trouble at one point in his pro career, and that was really like an anomaly because we never hear about Derrick getting into anything crazy. He did everything the right way coming out of Chicago, seriously. And he showed what you can achieve coming from the inner city, the hood. Like he was on 70 something in Paulina, Inglewood, to the bone, to the core. But he showed you what what was the recipe to make it, man. Stay on your grind, take your craft seriously, be a humble individual, respect everybody. Unless, respect, give everybody respect. But at the same time, respect the game. And he definitely respected the game. And yeah, man, and he took it seriously. He loved the game of basketball. Still loves the game of basketball. But he gave so many individuals in the city hope watching them play. Like when we watched Derrick get drafted #1, I swear the city of Chicago cried that day. The city of Chicago cried that day because one of our own was a number one pick. A number one pick. Like we was like, damn, a Chicago public school kid from Chicago public school taking the same buses and all of that we took going to school. Like that was surreal for me. Like I'm like, wow, my man went to school for that 1 year, went to the pros, did exactly what he had to do, got his family out of poverty, out of Inglewood, moved his family elsewhere, took care of his friends, took care of his brothers, took care of his nieces and nephews, and made life better for everybody. Recognizing at a young age that he was the ticket to get everybody out of poverty. And he stayed the course. He never swayed off. He did exactly again. He followed the blueprint and he trusted in God and trusted in his game that he would evolve. And by his third year, he was the MVP of the whole NBA. MVP of the whole league after saying, why not? Why can't I be MVP? And my man went on to average 25 and 7.7 assists. You can round it up to 8 assists a game. And that whole season, he was nothing short of marvelous. Like, he was magnificent. Serious. Like, I remember that like yesterday, and I knew. It was at one point, at the beginning of the season, I saw, yeah, he can get this. He can get this MVP. If the Bulls finish with a great record, he can get this MVP. And again, the Bulls was in a dark place when he got drafted to the Bulls. We had went through the Scott Skiles era, the baby Bulls era, where we were making the playoffs consistently for a while under Scott Skiles with Ben Gordon, Luol Deng, Kirk Heinrich, and that core. They did well, but then the time had come and passed for that. So Vinny Del Negro was brought in, and then Derrick, after the Bulls had like a horrible season, came and took us to the playoffs and led us to the playoffs in his first year and had a great first round series, his first playoff series against the Boston Celtics with KG, Paul Pierce, Ray Allen. Did phenomenal. But when Derrick came, and he was like he really put the city and the team on his shoulders, and it had a bad effect on his body. Ultimately, it wore him down. But I mean, from them times, man, like the young man executed. He did exactly what he was supposed to do. Was an MVP in his league and was the only MVP we've had and the only All-Star we've had, the first All-Star we've had since Michael Jordan, the first MVP that we had since Michael Jordan. So that Michael Jordan era, he was the first for all of that. So he did exactly what he was supposed to do. Somebody that looked like us, that came from the environments that we came from. The same wild, raucous environments that we grew up in. He came from that very same place and came and stood 10 toes down and was hooping on the big stage like it was no tomorrow. And I mean, putting a display on all my favorite guards growing up. Jason Kidd doing this thing against Allen Iverson, doing this thing against Steve Nash, doing this thing against all these different players and guards that I was like looking up to. Darren Williams, Chris Paul, putting up like 29 and 16 assists on Chris Paul and stuff like that. Like, it was surreal to me watching that because I had just came from seeing him at Simeon. I remember when he hit that game-winning shot against John Shire and them. I remember when he won the one state his senior year again. My man had like 2 points that game and let Tim Flowers and his teammates eat because they was blowing the other team out and he didn't have to do much because he was just that unselfish. And that ultimately led him to get into the NBA. Like, all of that, his attitude and persona on the court is what led to the basketball gods and guided him to the NBA. Unfortunately, his body wore down with them injuries, but I'm glad to see that my man's making a comeback. And my man's had a great season last year, averaging 18 points a game coming off the bench for the Minnesota Timberwolves, but earned him a 2-year deal for $15 million with the Detroit Pistons. Man, I'm so proud to see that. Again, so many other kids, when they saw Derrick, they knew they could do it too. They felt like, I can do that too. That's somebody from our same neighborhoods that made it, that did what he was supposed to do, and show respect to the game, and he did it. So then you had Jahlil Okafor going to the league, Anthony Davis, Jabari Parker coming from Simeon, just like D Rose, man. All of these young guys looked up to D Rose, man, because He was the guy that we saw become an all-star, 3-time all-star, become an MVP, like become the man. And really didn't care that he was the man. He didn't care nothing about being a man at all. He just cared about playing ball, cared about getting better, cared about being a great, all-time great, and trying to lead the Bulls to the promised land. Unfortunately, we kept running up against LeBron and D-Wade. Hey, what can you do when you come up against that? And really, D-Rose was what, him and Luol Deng, and Derrick only played with Ben Gordon that 1 year. Other than, he had good, what's my boy name? John Salmons. He had Ronnie Brewer, Kyle Korver, and them. Good role players, but Keith Bogans was his starting two guard the year he won MVP. And he was out there doing it, led the Bulls to the best record in the league, 62-20, over teams like the Cavaliers, over teams like the San Antonio Spurs, man. I will never forget that. To us, he is a winner in our eyes because he know where he came from and he never forgot about where he came from. Giving money back to Chicago public schools, giving money back to restore Murray Park, the park that he grew up in Inglewood, paying for kids' funerals that's been killed here in Chicago due to gun violence. Always staying a real one, always staying true to himself, true to his beliefs, and always showing love back to the city, man. That's why we always going to recognize him as an icon here, because his legend is cemented here. For real, even in Bulls history. You're like, the stuff he was doing, man, it was surreal. It was unreal. If you haven't seen him play, look up them high school clips when he was with Mean Streets. His brothers and them had their own AAU team they made. It was crazy, man. But yeah, man, Derrick changed so many lives in his family and changed a lot of other kids' lives too, because looking at him was enough motivation for a lot of other young kids in the hood to say, you know what? That man come from the same place we came from. Went to the same schools we went to. If he can do it, we can do it too. Or we can make it in any other arena of life. I hooped, but I wasn't a good hooper. I didn't hoop for the team. I hooped with my homies. But seeing him make it gave me the passion to say, you know what? I'm going to take the passion he uses for basketball. I'm going to use that in broadcasting and what I really want to do with my personal life, what I really want to do for my career goals. I'm going to put that same passion he puts into the game and the love and passion and respect he put into the game, I'm going to put that into my craft. So Derrick is right, man. It don't matter if he a Hall of Famer and if he not a Hall of Famer in other people's eyes. In Chicago, he is iconic here. We remember the work that he put in. He worked his ass off to get where he is. He deserved everything that he got. Because, yeah, man, that kid from Inglewood rose above it all. All the gang violence, all of that stuff going on in the city. All the other kids in the city got sucked into gang life, got sucked into leading down the wrong path and got locked up and all that crazy stuff and couldn't even make it to the point of them going to college. Couldn't even make it to the point of them going to the league. None of that. Got stopped. Fell short before. Not even due to their play. Fell short due to other stuff. But Derrick was the one that made it. He laid the blueprint out on what to do when you're going from high school and trying to get to the league. Love the game. Take the game seriously. Give it your all. And I promise you, it'll come back to you. So proud for Derrick. So happy for Derrick. We love Pooh in the city, man. We always giving back here. Always coming back and showing his face. It means a lot to a lot of these kids here, for real, for real. And the night he dropped 50, a lot of people in Chicago cried that night because it was absolutely marvelous to watch, man. Always a legend. Number 25 from Simeon. Never gonna forget that. Never gonna forget the times he went up against DeAndre Liggins, against Washington. Never gonna forget the times he was in battles at Marshall High School against Ryan Hare and again and Patrick Beverly, like I said before. Never gonna forget them days he was battling against Minister Louis Farrakhan's grandson. What was his name? Mustafa Farrakhan, I believe his name was. I'm never gonna forget them battles he had. I think Mustafa was playing at Thornridge or Thornwood or something like that. But never gonna forget that, man. Always, that stuff was always dope to watch. And D Rose is a legend, man. The one and only. He is a Hall of Famer in the eyes of Chicagoans. The core Chicagoans, man. The core Chicagoans, he is a Hall of Famer without a doubt. He made it, he executed. Machiavelli Mills TV, peace.